Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Libby Book Club. I'm your host, David Alan Patali, and my guest tonight is the acclaimed crime writer, Alan Carter, for his new book, Prize Catch. Alan, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, David. Great to be with you. It's a late night for me, but I'm still going.
Indeed, indeed. And Alan, I really appreciate you staying up for us. Of course, everyone, you will have noticed we have a new start time, 7:30. It just allows you to, uh, tranquilize the kids, deal with any dogs or partners that need settling, and just, have a bit more time to get settled, and then enjoy the chat we're about to have. But also, it means that our viewers and our authors on the East Coast, Alan's in Tasmania, have to stay up very late. So, Alan, we do appreciate your time staying up for us. So, for this bookie chat now. A little bit of housekeeping. So, of course, this is brought to us by Libby and also the State Library of WA and the good folk at Overdrive. Of course, you can get Prize Catch with no holds through the Libby app. You can also get the audio book. And I think at last count, Alan, you've got 802 loans through Libby and
Oh, that's pretty good.
399 loans of the audio book, which is fantastic. So,
That's great news. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I,
And
I
and
hope everybody likes it.
Indeed, indeed. And of course, I'd like to acknowledge that I am broadcasting to you tonight from the traditional lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and I pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, Alan, you're the author of Prize Catch, which I'll read the blurb because I don't want to ask you the dixer of like, what's your book about? But just to set the scene for everybody who may have read or are thinking of reading, when Ros Chen's wife Neem is killed in a hit and run on a lonely Tasmanian road, the grieving widow begins to wonder if Neem's death was an accident after all. Meanwhile, SAS veteran Sam Willard is hoping for a fresh start with a job at a salmon farm. But as allegations of old war crimes surface and Sam is promoted as a special operative against anti-salmon farm activists, he and Ros form an unlikely alliance. Forced to retreat into the unforgiving Tasmanian wilderness, Ros and Sam find themselves scrambling for the truth with murderous thugs on their trail. Alan, this is a book with a huge scope, but also in a small area of Tasmania, which then takes us into the wilderness. For you, what was it like bringing so many disparate elements together? You've got big salmon, you've got allegations of war crimes, you've got a crime procedural. Bringing all that together in Prize Catch must have been a bit of a challenge.
It was pretty scary as well, I think. I mean, among the scary things was suddenly deciding to write about Tasmania. I've been living here for 3 or 4 years before I actually got the nerve up to write about Tassie because I don't know. I get the impression that if you get it wrong, people kind of know where you live and will let you know you got it wrong. And I never felt that kind of fear with WA or New Zealand for some reason. But maybe just the tightness of Tassie makes you get that. But anyway, I got the nerve up and did it. And the two things that were inspiring me were very disparate things. The salmon industry and Richard Flanagan's book had just come out. And at the same time, you had Mark Willis's book about rogue forces. So I kind of thought if I'm going to make some big enemies, I may as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb, and I'll take on both the salmon industry and the SAS all in one go. Why not?
Well, before we dive deep into the characters and the story, why don't we let's start with the setting, Tasmania. Like you said, you've moved there 4 years ago now. You're originally from the UK. You've lived in Fremantle. You're published by Fremantle Press, of course, the great not-for-profit over here in WA. Um, Going to Tasmania, what did you first notice about it coming from the outside?
Well, we'd moved there. We'd also gone to New Zealand for a few years. I've seemed to write a book everywhere I go, but maybe I lack imagination. I can only write what I can see out of the window there. So what I noticed about Tasmania was the importance of the environment to people here, be it the mountains, or the ocean, or the coastline, or the rivers. There's a real passion for the environment. And you get that because, parts of this place are really, really beautiful. And there's a passion to try and preserve as much of that as possible. But there is also that tight knit. It's a very close knit place, and that solid sense of history. I read something the other day about the characterizing, it was actually characterizing the nature of corruption in Tasmania, and it was to do with calling them elite cartels. Effectively, it's a real old boys club here, and a lot of what happens behind the scenes, what makes it tick, is run by a few people who know each other very well, the old established families,
Mm.
um, probably around Sandy Bay, actually.
Yeah.
And so it's a very tight place, and you can be here for 3 or 4 generations, and probably uh, they will let you know that you still don't belong if that's what it takes.
No.
So it's a tight place to come into, but also we've also found it very welcoming as well. So we've met some good people here, and yeah, so I feel quite passionately about the place that I want to also be part of that voice for trying to um, save what remains of this beautiful place.
There's a line quite early on when two of the characters are looking out at the Salmon Bay, and one, I think it's Sam, says, "This is a beautiful place." And Dave, the guy now hiring him to be a special investigator for Big Salmon, says something to the tune of like, "Yes, but the land has to earn its keep." Like,
Yeah,
yeah, is that's the friction here in Tasmania, isn't it? We tourism wise, it's gorgeous, but
yeah.
if you're living there, you're trying to make a quid, aren't you?
And that was a similar thing that we found in New Zealand as well. I think in the New Zealand books, I was characterizing it. There's two types of people: people who want to preserve and protect nature, and the other kind of people who want to shoot it and skin it. Um, and it's not unlike that here in Tassie as well. That there's been a long-standing um, kind of divide. And I think it maybe not just Tasmania as well. I think you'll find it around the rest of Australia and around the world that the beauty, apart from the tourism, it doesn't pay the bills for a lot of people. And so they want the land to earn its keep. And some are a bit more short term about it than others.
Now, Alan, joining us tonight, we've got quite a few attendees listening into our chat. So, if anybody has a question for Alan about Prize Catch, or about any of his books, if you like, or just something that pops into your mind, please jump in and write you a question in the chat, and I'll do my best to weave it in. And like Julianne says in the comments, we've also got a free copy of the book for the best question or comment. And the way I kind of judge that is what kindles the most conversation, the most interesting chat. So, if you've got something to ask Alan, please jump in. And yeah, Alan, any question, welcome, right? We can, but you know, as long as we're within the guide rails. Now, oh, okay. So I've got one, but I'll see what I can do there. So, Alan, maybe just let's start at the very beginning. The inciting incident here is a hit and run accident. It seems like an accident, but the more it's investigated by the police, it's looking a bit it's looking a bit sketchy. Can you set the scene for us there with some of the people who are involved, Neem and Jill Whelan?
The opening scene is a woman riding up Sandfly Road, which is just out of the window there, and it's a bike ride I often take myself with my partner, Kath, and she's reflecting upon her move to Tasmania with her partner, who Rose, who has gone through what you might call post-traumatic stress from a bullying work situation. So she's pretty kind of beaten around the beaten around a bit. But Neve is trying to hold things together. She's an out there activist type, very fit, and trying to look after her partner Rose. But at some point along, it's not really a spoiler because it happens on page two.
Yeah.
She's killed in a hit and run. So Rose, her partner, then needs to deal with that as well as all of the other trauma she's dealt with and gradually pull herself out from a very deep black hole to find out what happened to the love of her life and to look after herself because she's also in danger now.
That brings Jill Whelan into her orbit. Jill's she's with the police, but she's sort of on her way out, isn't she? She's an older investigator and being sidelined by a lot of her colleagues.
Yeah, Jill is on the verge of retirement and being edged out by kind of her younger male boss who kind of she's invisible to him. But in reality, she's a lot smarter. I'll probably characterize her as Vera with a retractable baton because she's not only close to retirement, but she's really kick-ass as well.
Yeah,
And she's a good character to write because um, the temptation for a bloke like me is to have your main protagonist as somebody like me, um, and so to have women like Vera, women like Jill, in more visible and showing what they have to offer and what they are capable of is far more interesting to write as well. So Jill has struck a chord with a lot of people. I'm getting a lot of good feedback about her.
I really enjoyed her. Yeah,
Try and write a sequel with her in it.
excellent. Okay, excellent, excellent. No, I've greatly enjoyed it. I loved her guile, her ruthlessness, her just it's like she's fed up. She's just utterly fed up with the bullshit.
Yeah, she's had enough, and she's not going to take any nonsense from anybody, really. And sometimes it's in the sharpness of her tongue, and sometimes it's in the bluntness of her baton.
Mm. But certainly had the right instincts, and this is around about the time Big Salmon's introduced to us. Um, Alan, can you give us an idea of how dominant the industry is in Tasmania? Because you're living close to the water. Uh, to us, to anyone visiting Tasmania, it's idyllic, but it's actually the waterway is actually just a paddock, isn't it?
In essence, I mean, much of the science is out there, and a lot of it is reflected in Richard Flanagan's book Toxic. But there's also many reports, and basically, Atlantic salmon don't really belong in Tasmanian waters, and they to keep them disease free and whatever else free, they need antibiotics, need all sorts of treatment, and that's stuffing up the water in the area. And so Flanagan was talking about, 20, 30 years ago when there was a lot more fish life around the coast. And a lot of it is dead now. I swim in the ocean every week. And yes, there is still some life going on there. But compared to when I was swimming in WA or in New Zealand, even, it seems pretty dead here at times.
Um,
And I'm assuming that the salmon industry has a part to play in that. There's lots of toxins going into the water, and
mm,
but I think the other issue is that both the major parties here are pretty much locked into keeping it all going. They're a significant employer, but the yeah, I think Tasmania is run like that. I think that if like with the logging, with the pokies, with salmon, with whatever else, the few industries that there are here, they have a lot of sway with the governments because they're the only game in town.
yeah. And being the only game in town, that's when we meet Sam Willard. He's a former soldier, former special forces soldier, and we first meet him. He goes down and works on the salmon nets. He's blasting them with jellyfish with a hose, and a guy next to him's got a shotgun for the seals. It's a very sharp contrast to what you think salmon farming is like.
Yeah, I mean, Sam is ex SAS. He's had trouble trying to hold down a job since he came back from his tours of duty. Um, and the last few months because he's got PTSD. Finally, he gets this job as an attendant at a farmhand, basically on the salmon farms. It is pretty basic stuff. mending fish nets, blasting the jellyfish with a hose, shooting the seals, bombing the seals. Um, yeah, it's what he does. He probably is capable of better things, and then people within that industry, they know what his background is, and they find another use for him.
And that use is quite dark. That's when we meet. That's when we meet his offsider Dave, who offers him pretty much like it's like a leg up. It's a lot more pay, but for very different kind of work, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sam is living in the northern suburbs in a rental house with his wife and infant kid, and he wants to get a leg up into the housing market, but he's been priced out of it. Tasmanian house prices, like everywhere else, are skyrocketing. Um, he's lucky just to have a job and be able to pay the rent. Suddenly, he gets an offer he can't really refuse, where by using his skills that he learned in his tours of duty, he can get paid more and maybe get that dream house that he never thought he'd be able to afford. And so this guy Dave, who's also he's a bit of a spook, got a bit of an ex-military background to him, kind of draws Sam into this very dark world,
This is all.
which is
It's a
purely fictional, of course. I'm sure these people don't actually really exist.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, and well, and there's greed at the core here, isn't it? Everybody wants to. There's people who want to preserve the environment. There's people who want to preserve their industry. Sam wants a leg up in the world and to move on, and that all comes clashing together. And we see a series of murders. We see a series of home invasions. We see the hit and run in an entirely new light. It's people who either knew too much, asked the wrong questions, or just lived in the wrong house, but by the bay and are complaining. This is a cocktail of people wanting different things.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, obviously, I've taken it a step further and embellished it for the sake of crime fiction. But again, in Richard Flanagan's Toxic book, there are and in news media, there have been reports of people who have the activists being harassed. I think they call it the standard Tasmanian welcome is to have a dead wallaby left on your doorstep. And I didn't get it myself, but
Sure.
there's still time. But it is a calling card, if you like. And so that was drawing from Flanagan's book and from other things that are out there, researchable. I was able to embellish that. I thought it was perfect for crime fiction, basically.
Yes, yeah. I was going to ask, as a crime writer, I've read your Cato Kwong series, which look at a lot of bringing together all these different elements. Is crime writing about taking the darker passions and the darker possibilities and making them real, making them happen in order to explore them? Because things do happen in real life, but not to the compressed extent that it does in crime fiction. But crime fiction
Yeah,
allows you to explore that, doesn't it? And then to mirror back to the reader what's really going on.
yeah. I mean, sometimes real life is even darker than crime
Yep.
fiction, but we won't actually go there. But there are plenty of things to draw upon where you can embellish a little and crystallize a little and just use that to heighten the suspense of a story or the stakes. And so I think that those two books, the Toxic by Flanagan and Rogue Forces by Mark Willesee, um, even though they were very, very different subjects, that they rang bells for me as a potentially really good avenue for a crime fiction novel. And then the challenge was to try and put them together.
I've got a few questions in the chat. Peter, welcome to the chat. Sorry, the link had an error, but great that you're here with us. Nell is asking, Alan, does it take a psychological toll writing such dark characters and actions? What do you do to monitor and care for your well-being?
Um, Probably being passive aggressive. I get a lot out of my system by writing this stuff. So, um, yeah, I can name characters who I think people I might know who kind of I really wanted to do something about, but I couldn't because in real life you might get arrested for that. But seriously, yes, it is dark stuff, and sometimes you do go into a dark place, and um, to get out of it, I do things like enjoying swimming in the ocean or going for walks in the mountains here. And there's plenty about the natural environment here to kind of take you out of that world. It's also good to get off the net for a while as well, which is because I think in writing and researching, you can spend a lot of time doom scrolling. And so I find it really important to try and get away from that, even if it's, for a few days at a time, hiking or something like that.
I was going to say, Alan, you were speaking before about Jill Whelan with her telescopic baton. I found the scene where she uses that telescopic baton on Mark, is it Limages? One of the most
Limits.
one of the most odious characters I've ever encountered. Just on the surface, nice as pie. Beneath, vicious, utterly vicious and reprehensible. Was that
Yeah, I think he reflects that, the toxic masculinity that's out there. And yeah, he's just a really nasty character. He's an ex of um, Neve, who we meet on page one. Um, and so, yes, in seeing what he does, although you don't want to encourage violence, you actually don't really mind what Jill does to him at that point, because he's had it coming for a while.
And I don't know, there was a lot, the theme of there was a need for control. He had a need for control. He wanted to control his relationships. Big Sam
Yeah.
need to control the narrative and to control everything around them. Sam's trying to control his own life. Jill is trying to, control her exit. Did you find in bringing all of these disparate elements together that certain themes came through and things started to align in ways maybe you didn't expect?
I think certainly the in terms of Big Salmon wanting to uh, control um, control the protesters, control the image that presented of it, control the information flow, and that sense of kind of entitlement that if you think, if you've got the government in your pocket and you've got the opposition in your pocket and you've got the elements of the media in your pocket, you're big on control and want to make sure that nobody steps out of line. And that's reflected also in what's happening with the SAS war crimes inquiry, where again, kind of vested interests of wanting to kind of keep a lid on that. Um, and so all of those things they have similarities and parallels. So yeah, I think there was and Mark Limmer's doing what he does. Um, some of Jill's colleagues in the higher echelons of the police. Everybody trying to kind of keep a lid on things, and sometimes the lid needs to be blown off.
Yeah. Which you're known for writing police, but was it a challenge to write Sam? In that he's an ex-SAS operator. He's from a military background. And also Dave is, like you said, he's a bit of a spook. And then you've also got some of Sam's colleagues, former members of his patrol, coming in as well. Did you meet anyone or do any specific research, or are these people that you've encountered?
Um, I know one or two people in the SAS, but really, I just used a lot of the detail that's in Mark Willis's book. But what it was really liberating having Sam and that world in there because yes, you as you say, my background has been writing police procedurals, and they have their own kind of
Yeah.
rules there. With Sam, I mean, it changed the rules of what I was writing. You know, they can go off into the mountains and shoot machine guns at each other, and it's all kind of crazy, die hard type stuff. And so that was good fun to write. It was a challenge for me to move into that world where you don't have so many restrictions and you can kind of do crazy stuff. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed kind of seeing where that would take me.
I've got a comment here from Ellen McLean. She says, "Hi, I love Prize Catch. Earlier this year, I read both your Nick Chester books, as I'm originally from Blenheim. The way you described all the locations in those stories was amazing and brought back a lot of memories of school camps and hikes through the Marlborough Sounds and Havelock. Is it Pelorus or Pelorus area?
Pelorus, yeah.
I've never been to Tasmania, but I now have a picture in my head of the beauty of the scenery from the way you've written it. That really struck me as well, in that, the second half of the book, they're on the run, they're in the wilderness. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous, but my gosh, it's scary as well. It's do you have that feeling of looking out your window and thinking that's gorgeous, but when you're walking in it, it's also that it's got that primordial terror to it?
Well, I've also done a few kind of big hikes here, maybe the Overland Track, which is where
Oh, okay.
Sam and whatever go to, but also the South Coast Track. And so they're pretty remote and very challenging. And so I think I used some of the pain that I felt in that and attributed to Sam because yeah, there's some big hills and mud, and I didn't actually go any hiking in any blizzards or anything. I imagined that, but yes, I've been on some big hikes before, which on some days left me miserable as hell. And I applied that misery to Sam. Uh, so they used that pain.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cathartic, right? That's yeah. How do you deal with the dark places? Well, you use the pain, use it in literature. So, yeah.
Mm.
We had a good question here from Jordana. It says, "Enjoy reading Prize Catch. Why is the novel called Prize Catch? How did you come up with the title?"
I think we were looking at kind of the fishy element of prize catch, which has that fishing thing about it, but also I think Michael Turnell as a is a prize catch for the war crimes investigators, as he's such a high profile person. And he's a prize catch for in the background to all this is the Taliban wanting to make a deal before they will let people get on the planes to get out of Afghanistan. They want a show trial, if you like. And so Michael Turnell is their prize catch again. So all of this is just the double thing on prize catch, if you like.
I would like to talk to you a little bit more about Jill Whelan and Kavanagh. Uh, that Kavanagh, this is the thing I found with a lot of the characters here. They're all quite sympathetic, even though they've got dark sides to them. They've Kavanagh's, quite dismissive a lot of the time of Whelan, but at the same time, you depict the pressures that he's under. He's getting a lot of phone calls from people above him. Also with Sam, Sam does some terrible things, but at the same time, you give us such a portrait of his background and his cares and his worries and his desires that you don't quite forgive him, but you don't quite understand him, but you see his perspective. So
Yeah.
is crime fiction a great way of exploring moral ambiguity in that action and words don't necessarily have to line up?
I think so, yeah, and the kind of crime fiction I like to read does that well. Where if you just have two-dimensional cardboard characters, the good person, the bad person, and no other elements to them, and that's a bit dull because we know that good people do bad things for good reasons, and all of the various permutations of all of that. That is the world, I think, and so I think it's important to reflect that complexity that's out there. particularly Sam earlier on, when he's asked to do these pretty terrible things to the anti-salmon protesters. I did want to make him a dangerous, scary guy, but then pull him back from that, and from that turn him into the hero that he wanted to be, because he, during the course of his tours of duty, he started out wanting to be a hero. Um, he was asked to do some terrible things as part of that, and he found out how corrupt and twisted and horrible he could be if ordered to be. And so I was reflecting that aspect of him, but
Nice.
then kind of giving him some redemption, gradually bringing him back from that dark hole.
That's Roz's journey as well. When we meet
Yeah,
Roz, she's absolutely down in the hole, with no direction, but she finds courage.
yeah, and it's I mean, she's bedbound, she's on anxiety medication, she's a complete mess, keeps on cracking up. But this she's been like that for 2 or 3 years, and this crisis forced upon her, um, in a way, kind of saves her as well, because she has no choice but to pull herself out of it and find out what she is and what she was and what she can be.
Um, this is an odd thing to say, but something I really enjoyed about Prize Catch is it's longer than I thought it was. Like it's when you pick it up, it's a decently slim volume, but there's a lot. There's it's this how many words is it? It's about 110.
It's about yeah, about 100. Um, most of my books are around about 100,000. Yeah.
Yeah. It just the detail that you're able to offer is fabulous, but it never felt slow. So what's your process for writing? We've got a great question here from Ellen, another one, saying, I'd love to hear about your daily process when it comes to your writing. I met a couple of authors last year who were self-professed procrastinators and did a lot of their writing at the end of the day once they'd run out of distractions. When you're in the thick of writing, what would a typical day look like for you? And did you ever come to a bit of writer's block? And how did you push past? So yeah, what does your typical uh, writing experience look like? And how did you make Prize Catch so dense, but also so fast? It's
Well, it takes a number of versions to get to that point, obviously. But when I'm on a roll, I would be doing kind of 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and I'll apply to it like a job and trying to aim for a minimum number of words per day, 2, 3,000, whatever, knowing that I'll be coming back to it again and again and again to kind of shape and polish. Um, I think in terms of keeping that pace, I suppose my background as a documentary maker and filmmaker, I've got a strong visual sense, and I really particularly applied it to Prize Catch in terms of um, imagining it on the screen in that kind of full on die hard fashion. So I did go for broke with this one, and kind of I went out on a limb, and at times it scared me how much of a out on a limb I went, because it wasn't my normal
yeah.
style. But it was part of that was to challenge myself as well, I think.
I also really appreciate the humor. That's one of the great things about the Kato Kwong series. It's got lovely humor as well as those dark moments. Was that allows you to bring some humanity here. These are, like you said, they're not just cardboard cutout characters. They've got flesh and blood. They've got moods to them.
Yeah, yeah. And Jill and her colleague Husey are kind of the classic foils for that. There's lots of humor between how they operate together. Um, and most of my books, be it the New Zealand series or Kato Kwong or this one, humor is a strong element of what I do. within the dialogue or within the situations. It's part of that light and dark thing to have that light and shade going on.
Alan, I guess on a personal note, why did you move to Tasmania? And it's fascinating how you said wherever you go, you write a book. So it's artists respond to their environment, don't they?
Yeah. Well, we were living in New Zealand in a quite a remote part of the Marlborough Sounds area. But we found one day that it was a bit too remote because my wife Kath had an accident on the farm and broke a leg and had to be chopped out to the hospital. And it took an ages for the ambulance to get there and all that kind of stuff. And we realized, yes, it's beautiful here, but
Yeah,
that remoteness kind of made us think twice about things. We didn't want to go back to Perth because it's getting too hot for us.
yeah.
So we've got a daughter living here in Tasmania, and she'd been lobbying strong for us to be proper grandparents. I'll probably will never be one of those, but we do our best. And Tassie, in terms of the environment, seemed to offer the best of both worlds. We were able to, have that bit of kind of the New Zealand hills and valleys and rivers and whatever here too, but also be closer to everything. So here we are in Tassie.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, I think we've been here about 5 or 6 years now, but it took a while for me to get that nerve up to actually write about the place.
Yeah. Do you think you could ever live somewhere or visit somewhere that you wouldn't write about, or is is your eye always roaming and always looking? Are your ears always pricked up?
Uh, yes to all of that. We're not going to move anywhere else again. I intend to die here. So uh, Tassie's probably the last place we'll move to. So I'll get used to writing about Tassie, I think, and try and nail it.
Excellent. Well, you spoke about a sequel with Sam and Jill. Any hints on in what we can expect? Is there another industry you're gonna eviscerate, or is there a
No, I don't think any industries I should go for here. I think there's another element that's out there, which is out there for all of us in the world now, which is to do with that rightward drift of the world, the rampant populism and all of the things that come with that. So that's the themes I'm exploring at the moment. So lots of doom scrolling again. Yeah,
okay, well, there's plentiful doom scrolling to be had. The world does seem
yeah,
to be accelerating quite a lot at the
yeah,
moment. Okay. Um, I wanted to ask as well. We picked out a section for you to read for us.
yeah.
Would you do us the honor of reading some of Prize Catch and give us a bit
Sure.
of context for this part?
Yeah, no worries. So this is one of the scenes that you mentioned earlier, where Sam has been called upon to um, use his dark skills from the war zones to put to use on enemies of the salmon farms. Roz assumes the other videos are more of the same, and she's had enough. That tight tangle of jealousy inside her is overpowering. She'd been trying to distract herself the last few hours. Some yoga, piano practice, a list of gardening jobs, lunch, a list of meals for the coming week. List. What's the point? She glances out the window at the school kids skipping across her driveway, sees the ute parked over the road. Two blokes, probably from the housing development down the hill, no doubt figuring how to cram more overpriced retirement villas into the decimated acreage. A walk in some fresh air might have been nice, but she can't face dodging the kids on the footpath or shielding her jagged nerves from the barking dogs. Is it time for the next round of meds? The ute starts up and, with a glance her way from the driver, off it goes. Why was he looking at her? Ros dismisses the question. That's the kind of thing Neve would think. Ros pops her meds, puts on Classic FM, and starts chopping veggies for a curry, a favourite recipe of Neve's, which will no doubt be delicious, but may from now on leave a sour aftertaste. After a while, the meds kick in and she's nicely drowsy. She pushes the ingredients to one side, reaching into the fridge for the half bottle of Pinot Gris, and grabs the cheese and bickies. The couch beckons. It's so hard to wake up these days, eyelids so heavy, you feel a need to prise them apart with your fingers. Head mummified in choking old rags. A taste in her mouth that could be formaldehyde. Ros feels dead already and may as well be. Has she gone blind? She's sure she opened her eyes, but it remains pitch black. How long has she been asleep? Thump. That's what woke her. There's somebody in her home. A scrape, a drawer opening, being opened by somebody. She should stay still, silent, let them take what they want and go. I'm insured, just go, please. Why is it so dark? Where is it? A male voice close to her ear. If she wasn't on tranquilizers, she might well be crapping herself by now. Instead, just a cold paralysis and perhaps a wish for the worst so she can be reunited with Neve. What do you want? Money? My wallet's in the basket on the kitchen counter. Take it. PC, laptop, iPad, phone. Where are they? If this was a desperate junkie, she'd expect more urgency and less control in their voice. Perhaps also an unwashed smell, bad breath, chemicals, something like that. But this voice is calm, unhurried. The smell? A hint of brine like a windy day at the beach. Where is a laptop? Good question. Can I turn the light on? I can't see. No need. A surge of impatience. This is stupid. I can't see. You can't see. How am I supposed to find the things you want? Just tell me where they are. I don't fucking know. Then she does. She slipped the laptop and phone under the couch before she dropped off to sleep. Feels down in that direction. A staying hand on her shoulder. All right, got it. She hears them being lifted, put into a bag. He can see in the dark. How? Oh my God, night vision goggles? This thumb drive in your laptop, is it the only one or are there more? That's it. He's not a thief. He's not taking the wallet and gadgets for selling. He wants information, Neve's information, the stuff that got her killed. A gloved hand cups her chin. I hope that's the truth, Ros. You don't want me coming back. He knows her name. It's the truth, she lies. And then he's gone.
Bloody scary. Because it's yeah. There's a there's a term you use, and forgive the swearing, everyone. Yeah, you said mind fuckery. That it's a technique that's used to just absolutely mess with people and to make them fearful. This is an example of that, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, I suppose when I'm writing the police procedurals, and that's basically the mind of the bad person. So it's always a challenge getting into that mindset. Um, it can be the most creative and, if you like, entertaining in a dark way as well. Trying to imagine um, the mind fuckery, if you like, um, and and so putting and knowing Sam's background as a dark operative in Afghanistan, and reading some of the things I've been reading in Mark Willis's book, it wasn't too hard to kind of find that voice as well.
So suppose a question about your swimming in the icy waters of Tasmania. How do you do that? How do you actually survive doing that? Does it take grit and determination or a bit of preparation, or is it something that you thrive on? And does that also then inform your work, your writing?
Coming from doing lots of ocean swimming in WA, it was a real shock to the system.
Yeah.
And it took a long while to get used to it. I mean, we've got there. swimming wetsuit, which when we first arrived, it was on all year round. The warmest the water will get here during summer is usually, well, previously it's been around about 18. This summer it's been kind of a balmy 19, even 20.
Yeah.
Um, and I noticed when I went back to WA one winter, and I never would have dreamt of swimming in the ocean in winter in WA. But then it was 17 or 18, which is summer here. So it was all relative. But now, um, in summer, I can go without the wetsuit and count the number of strokes till the ice cream headache goes away. And yeah, you get used to things.
Yeah. And as you said, it's climate change is very much a theme in prize catch. There are people moving to Tasmania, pricing other people out because they're climate refugees or tree changers. And the industry itself of big salmon, we're told, salmon's healthy for you, but it comes at such a price to the environment. These are brittle things, aren't they? The big salmon company, D'Entrecasteaux, they appear very strong, but behind they're panicking. They've got a very weak position. They're trying to sell to another big company, but they've got huge weaknesses inside that they're just trying to cover up. So uh, this mindfuckery we were talking about before, it as scary as it is, it's also masking great weakness, isn't it?
It is a bit of a house of cards, and it's at some point it's going to come crashing down because they have these wellboats out in the channel, and I think it's described in the book that they're there to kind of try and flush out the effects of war of the salmon being in water that's a little bit too warm for them, which gives them this gill disease that you know it just stuffs everything up, and so they've got to keep on being flushed all the time, and that's not going to get any better. Um, so they can pour in all of the antibiotics into the water they want, and they can and the government will keep on letting them do that, and they can keep on destroying the environment. But at some point, something's going to give. Um, and it's like so many things out in the world at the moment. The chopping down of trees, the fossil fuels, all of that. Like there's queens of denial that it's not sustainable. The whole thing is going to come crashing down at some point. And this is just a little bit of like a microcosm of that in Tasmania, I think. So I think at the moment we're looking to expand rather than contract the salmon farms, looking to expand into other parts of Tasmanian waters which they haven't stuffed up yet. Um, and so, at some point you run out of a place to stuff up, really.
James. We've got a great question from Nell. She says, "Do you eat salmon? I'm not sure I want to."
I don't anymore, no, no. And the more people who stop eating salmon as a result of this book, that's great.
And Alan, something I uh sort of struck me in reading that is that Prize Catch is so timely. It's a book of now, but it feels straight from the headlines, but not in a forced way. Is that the power of crime fiction that you can write about things now in that are in the zeitgeist that are concerning us, and you can explore it in a way that's very engaging, but also that allows you to go very far. You can go right out to the perimeter on some of these things.
It's always quite a fine line trying to. I mean, yeah, politics comes into my writing a lot, um, and there's always the danger of being preachy at times. And so trying to find that line between talking about the things I want to talk about, but keeping it in an entertaining, um, suspenseful storyline. That's the thing I'm juggling all the time. Uh, as a documentary maker before this, I was always doing. social issues stuff, and that became uh, a lot harder to do within what was happening in TV at that time. Became more formulaic. Crime fiction's formulaic as well. I realise that. But switching over to writing fiction allowed me to, but it liberated me, I think, just to talk about stuff that is important to me, but also just to make stuff up and have fun as well, and just
Yeah.
trying to keep it all of that, hold all that together.
Yeah. Well, Alan, we've got 10 minutes left. That's absolutely ripped through. So if anybody has a question for Alan, please get it in now, because we're coming to the end of our time. But we've got a question here from right at the start of our chat, which I wanted to get to. It's from Shelley McKinnon. She says, Alan, will we see anything more of the Marlborough Man?
Well, indeed, there's a third Marlborough Man novel coming out this year in October, in fact.
Yes.
That's called Franz Joseph. And yes, we've got Nick and Latifah continuing to do their thing.
Fantastic. Well, Alan says, hooray, can't wait. And so Shelley McKinnon says, yes, excellent, excellent. Oh, that's great. So, is that your process, Alan? You've always got one in the wings. You've got one to come.
If I'm inspired and if I've got something going on, uh, I like to be able to keep a book going. Sometimes I can go 2 or 3 years and there's nothing happening, and but this year happens to be straight after we've had Prize Catch come out, and almost exactly a year later we've got Francis Joseph coming out, and
Excellent.
then hopefully it'll be this Tasmanian sequel to Prize Catch after that.
And Alan, I wanted to ask you a very nerdy question because you're a doctor. You have a PhD.
Yeah.
Uh, and the PhD is in projections of Australian identity onto Asian Pacific neighbours in works of crime fiction. You have very prominent Asian Australian characters in your books, Kato Kwong most notably, but also Roz. In writing these characters, and in also your intellectual pursuit and your intellectual study, what was your process for doing that? Because they're beautifully done. This is a question we get a lot. How do you, as a particular person, write about another particular person?
Um, I think if I was setting out writing now, just starting, I probably wouldn't have created Cato. I think when I created Cato, I was probably less knowledgeable about the pros and cons of doing that as a middle-aged white guy. And there is that ongoing debate about who we have the right to write. Um, but in doing so, and I explored it in the PhD, that what the issues are when you do that. I think a lot of research, a lot of respect, and yeah, just basically trying to do the homework on and not go into areas which are trying not to go into areas which are really not mine to go into. And so all of these things come into play. It's complicated and it's no easy answers for it. And sometimes it's done well, sometimes it's done shockingly badly. But it is it's a big debate about what we can write and how you write it. But I think the best you can aim for is kind of yeah, a sense of respect.
Hmm. And with all the characters, they're people. You wrote about people. And like we were talking about earlier, they're three-dimensional. They've got their own thing going on, and that
Yeah,
comes across very strongly in each of the characters. It's about the person, and they
yeah,
pop up the page. Yeah.
yeah. I think there are universals about people's lives as well. If you seeking redemption for something you might feel guilty about, or trying to drag yourself out of a hole that you've dug yourself into, or understanding people, empathizing with people. The all of the things of literature, of crime fiction, of any fiction, could be Game of Thrones, but
Yeah.
to do kind of, ambition, love, honor, a whole bunch of things that they're all there in all storytelling, I think, and they can be applied whatever time, place, or people you're writing about, I think.
And Alan, what's on your side table at the moment? What are you reading, and what's really inspiring you when you're not working on your own things?
I'm in a book club which is reading The Beach at the moment.
Alex
The
Garland.
Alex Garland, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I was aware of it, but never really knew what it was. So I'm reading that. Um,
That's one
but
of my favorites.
yeah.
Yeah.
And because I'm learning French, I'm reading it in French. So that kind of two birds with one stone, if you like.
Is that why there was some French in Prize Catch? Le Noir.
Yeah, I try to sprinkle it with a bit of my knowledge here and there.
That's great. Yeah.
I think what else I've been reading lately. Yeah, I've forgotten. It's
I suppose while we're there, who were the writers that influenced you to write? So that animated you and maybe even continue to influence you.
I think when I first started writing crime fiction, the Ian Rankin's Rebus series kind of I was a big follower of that. I haven't managed to read the latest one yet, but that was a big influence on um, just what crime fiction could do and having a great central character to follow. I was also reading a lot of James Lee Burke for a while, the Dave Robichaud series set in Louisiana. Um, yeah, they were probably the two bigger influences in the early days, I think. I really like Gary Disher's work.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's
Man.
yeah, he's another go-to crime writer for me. Mm.
Well, Ellen, look, thank you very much for staying up late for us. We're coming to the end of our time, and I was saying to you before, I first saw you speak at the West Australian the Perth Writers Festival in like 2015. So I've been following you since then, and it's been a
Right.
pleasure to chat to you and to read Prize Catch. I'm very excited for your next one too, and also to know that Sam and Jill are coming back. That you've got something on the boil. That's very exciting. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, David. Been great to chat. And yeah, I, I assume you've worked out who did the best question.
I reckon our best question was from Ellen McLean. So Ellen, if you can, what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to put this in the chat. This is the Facebook group that I actually host for Libby Book Club. So if people have enjoyed this chat, please join the Facebook group because I post the new content in there, and also there'll be a recording of this. Ellen and I having a chat with all of your questions that will be posted in there. But Ellen, if you can get in touch with us as well, this is my email address. It's all publicly available, so I'm not giving away the crown jewels here, but it's daveallenpatali@gmail.com. If you just email me, and we'll get your address from you, and we'll get a copy of Prize Catch posted out to you. Alan, thank you so much for your time, and thank you again. Thank you for staying up. I think you can go to bed now, right?
Okay. Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Libby Book Club, for inviting me on. So it's been good. It's been fun. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.